Wow, I'm all purple and green. Excellent. Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us today for this live stream. I'm joined by the legendary Skip Allen.
Wow. Now that's the funniest thing I've ever heard, Aaron.
I had everything all set up, and then I switched to my camera, and I'm all purple and green. So that's live streaming for you.
Yeah,
As they say, if something doesn't go wrong, you're not live streaming.
there you go. Well, I appreciate being here, whether you're purple and green or not.
It's that, yeah. That's just kind of how it is. You know, you can spend all the time in the world getting set up, and then there's always one thing that goes wrong. But thanks for joining us today. Skip's over here on the right. As you can see, he's got a square canvas going. I got a square canvas going. And we knew we wanted to do a live stream, but we didn't know what we were going to do. And at the very last minute, Skip said he was going to do what was it called, Skip?
I was going to start with some ENSO, ENSO, which is just a circle, and it has to do with Asian philosophy, but I don't know all of that part. I just like making the circles.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to do that too. So we're going to be doing some abstract painting. You all are welcome to follow along. We're using Corel Painter 2020 here, and many of you probably use Corel Painter. If you don't, there's a free trial that you can get if you want to follow along with us. And we'll go ahead and get started painting here. There are a few comments here that I just want to shout out. Tana's here. Good to see you, Tana, and Carrie Mitchell. Davey's here, Bill's here, Rita, Glinson, Kurt, good to see you, Kurt. Bill's here watching from New Mexico, Kathy's here from Wyoming, and Raquel's here from Vancouver. Good to see you, Raquel.
I wish we could all see each other and get together. I mean, I know all the names that you're mentioning, and we need a cruise or something like that.
Yeah. Corel Painter cruise. I feel like if I was on a boat and I was staring at my computer, I'd get seasick. Maybe some sort of land journey, tour bus.
Right.
Galen's here. Good to see you, Galen. I know, it's been a while, buddy. Galen's one of my fellow artist friends. He's a YouTuber and a live streamer, and he's actually done a lot to get me back into live streaming. He's shown me how cool it can be and all the crazy things you can do with it. Funny enough, I had to disable some things because since you're joining me today, Skip, I didn't want it to get too crazy, but there are these cards that you can get, kind of like baseball cards in a sense. They're more like a game rather than like, you know, baseball cards, but they're the same in that you can buy packs of cards, and then they can do different things. You can say, you know, if you play this card, I'll draw only with the mouse for 10 minutes, or you know, this card you can zoom in really, really far to the canvas, or this card will shift the hue, and things like that. So he turned me onto these, and people can buy them and just play them during your live streams.
That sounds fun.
So I had to disable that because, you know, I didn't want these cards to be going off and you'd be like, what's going on here?
I would have probably been all right.
Okay, so the goal here is to make a circle and to just kind of see where your mind takes you. Is that correct?
Well, really, the way it works is the artist is supposed to be at one with himself, and as he makes the circle, he becomes one with the painting, and you know, it's all about the circle. And really, the purest form would be just a circle. But I'm not a philosopher in that sense, and so for me, I like adding stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people do. They create these really complex and beautiful forms with just these marks. And like this one, for me, this one is finished. I love the way that little tree thing kind of came out in the middle, or whatever you want to think of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked the way the circle went. It reminds me of a geode. And this brush that I was using is actually called a geode brush.
That's cool. Looks kind of
So,
like a cross section of a log too.
yeah, does that too. Um, so anyway, that's number one, and I'm going to just quickly save that. And let's see.
I'm just using thick paint here to kind of let some stuff happen.
Yeah, I was going to play with a little thick paint on one of them. I can't find where I put this stuff. Here it is.
There's a lot of artists who get really focused on objective art, and I think it's part of experiencing art and enjoying it is just to be able to make it and not have to have it, you don't have to take a photograph and sit down and try to copy a photograph to enjoy art.
Yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly there. I'm I'm old enough now that I don't have to paint to make a living or anything like that. So I'm lucky enough that I can just do whatever I want. Okay, so now we'll.
Yeah, sometimes there is that element if you're doing it commercially. There is a lot of art that people make not necessarily because they want to, but because that's what other people want. That's what the consumer wants.
Right.
And that's.
Now tell me, I'm making a new canvas, and if I'm not making it in the right size or whatever, let me know.
It is absolutely perfect.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we spent some time ahead of time getting all the visual stuff set up.
Whoops.
And the audio, but then I turned purple at the last minute. But
good.
People don't expect much of my live streams. I think they know what they're getting into.
Will people be asking questions and stuff?
I hope so. Let's see. Let's encourage people to ask questions.
Okay.
Feel free to ask us questions about digital art or art in general. Chemistry. What do you know about chemistry, Skip?
Well, I actually majored in chemistry for 3 years.
Then we're good then.
Yeah, 20 hours away from a BS in chemistry before I ran off to art school.
It's an interesting pivot there.
Yeah, well, it was pre-med, and after I worked in a hospital for a while, I realized that was not what I wanted to do, and I went off to art school thinking I would get a degree in medical illustration. But fell in love with clay, and so didn't do it.
It's interesting what, who knows they're going to be an artist and just goes for that, and then other people just kind of end up there. I knew I wanted to be an artist. I didn't know that I was going to be making art on YouTube and doing videos and doing digital art. So it's
right.
It's a surprise. But I figure art is art as long as I'm making art. If that evolves over time, that's okay.
Right. Well, I was, clay was my main interest for the longest time, and I feel most creative with clay. I don't know why that is, but I do. And painting was never anything that I was planning on staying with. That was just sort of playtime.
Mm-hmm.
And I did make my living with clay for about 30 years. And I was telling somebody the other day that what was neat about it is I would hear from somebody, and I may know them, I may not know them, and they would say, "I had coffee with you the other day," and I would look at them and think, I haven't seen you in 20 years. What are you talking about? And they would say, I bought those mugs of yours, and every time I pull one out and have coffee, I think about you. And I thought, well, that's neat. Never had realized it had that sort of benefit.
Mm-hmm.
But that was one of the things I loved about clay. I have no idea what I'm doing now that I'm talking. I'm not making any sense.
And it's kind of fun. I mean, I've never really gotten too into pottery, but I had a friend who he was really into it, and would go to the store and get all the different glazes, and you have to know, you might look at a glaze and it might be one color, and then when you fire it, it's a completely different color.
Right. Well, see, remember my chemistry background, so I made all my own glazes.
Ah,
And yeah, it
now I
was,
see how those two skills tie together.
well, they really do. Um, although the typical way to do it when I was being trained uh, was to you take some ash and some dirt and some other stuff and throw it together and make a whatever. And that was the way most people made them. But I researched and did a lot of work with making glazes, and it was one of the things I was, I guess, known for. That was kind of fun,
Mm-hmm.
funky deal. Oh,
I
look
like.
at yours.
I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I'm starting to see there's this river that's crashing onto rocks and logs and stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't see it until I got kind of down here and started exploring. Now, this is fun. I have not tried this technique, but I do really like just kind of letting my mind wander and making art.
Yeah. Let's switch to another something.
Yeah, I like this. Let's see if we got any questions here. Eric's
Okay.
here. Good to see you, Eric. Linda Boswell's here. Good to see you, Linda. She's in Spain.
Ooh, where in Spain?
DMB wants to know if we're drawing on Cintiqs. You're drawing on a Cintiq, correct?
Correct.
We're drawing on Cintiqs. Eric's in France. Lynn's in Canada. It's really neat that we have people from all around the world getting together to do the same thing.
Right. I lived in Spain for 2 years. That's why I asked where in Spain she might be.
There's a little bit of a delay between when we talk and the chat. So let's see. She'll probably comment in a minute here. Let's see. Paul wants to know, Skip, did you put down paper first?
I did.
And
yeah, I do a paper overlay.
He's interested in knowing how as well.
Okay, it's easy enough. The first thing to know is I have a, well, I just dropped my stylus. That's great. Now I just kicked it under some plastic. Okay, well, what I'm going to tell you is that I have, hold on, let me get this. I've got to take myself out of the loop for a second. Hold on.
Okay. Got to be like those rock and roll drummers, where if you lose a drumstick, you have another pen ready to go.
Well, it's under the desk in a place where I can't get to, so I'm just going to leave it there. I have another one I can work with.
Sweet.
Okay, the way I do the paper is I have a script that I use, and they're called paper scripts, and there are 4 of them. There's a reset paper to default, there's a show paper text, there's a paper overlay, and there's a flow map reset to default. And these 4 paper scripts are in my at my blog. So if you wanted to get these, just go to my blog and you can download them. Let me just show you what they do real quick. So I'm going to open up the same. No, I don't want to open. Sorry about that. I don't know how to work Painter. I'm going to get a new document, and it's got this paper selected. And I just do that. Okay. Now we're going to look at the layers channel. All right, so you need to be on the canvas. You don't have to put any color down, but I like to have a little color to it. So the first thing I do is take the bucket tool and I pick a color. And I usually, they're those gray range colors that Painter has. And I usually grab something in there because they're sort of neutral grays. And we'll just grab that for whatever it's worth. And I fill with whatever that color is. Now, the next thing that I have to do is I just click on paper overlay and voila. Now, what it did was it put it on the canvas, lifted it to the next level. And when you go up there, it reduced the opacity to about 80%, and it's set up as a gel. So I can either work underneath or over the top. And I usually like to work over the top, and I lock it and then start with the next layer. Now, if you want to do that without the script, it's a matter of you just go to select menu and you select auto select. And when you get auto select, let's see if it'll come up in the middle. Yeah, under auto select, you select paper and then say okay. And so what that's going to do is give you a selection of the paper. And then you fill it with one color, invert the selection and fill it with another color. And then you just float that layer up above and you have a facsimile of the paper that you're painting on. The only reason I do that is because it makes me think I'm working on paper, where that's not normally the case. And it actually gets covered up, so
Yeah.
it's kind of silly, I guess.
No, it makes sense. There's something there versus
Right.
the white canvas is just a blank void. And sometimes it feels uncomfortable. Sometimes it just doesn't feel right. It almost doesn't feel like you're not making art. So I think a lot of people start that way. I have some stuff set up ahead of time that I just have saved as templates, and then I just load the template, and then I have, like watercolor paper for when I'm going to do a watercolor painting, or canvas for when I'm going to do oil. But a lot of the time, if my goal is just to make a painting, let's say for a video or something, I usually will just start with a blank canvas because I just want to get into it and do it. But other times I might feel like having that aesthetic of painting with traditional media on traditional canvas, in which case then it really is nice to use that. Let's see. Linda is in Andalusia.
Okay. Well, I lived in Andalusia as well. I lived at Morón de la Frontera, which is about 30 miles south of Sevilla.
Andalusia, Torremolinos. Torremolinos. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong.
I'm trying to remember. Was that on the coast?
Let's see. While we wait for Linda to get back to us on that. Bill wants to know, do we use Wacom's Express keys much?
I do.
On the Cintiq, or do you have the remote?
Yeah, on the Cintiq. There are quite a few that I use on the Cintiq, but I also use the radial menu a lot.
Yeah, I will use them sometimes. Like if it's on the Mobile Studio Pro, since that I usually won't have a keyboard handy. they really come in handy. They're almost, you have to have them. When I'm working on my desktop, I think I'm just so used to using the keyboard that, anything that I want to do, like panning and stuff like that, or filling and saving, I'll just use the keyboard. But there are certain workflows where they do come in handy. And so I will use the remote occasionally for that. But I also have on-screen buttons. You have a lot of them too for different things, and that's, sometimes that's easier for me than even using an express key since it's already on the screen.
Right.
So I have a lot.
Go ahead. I use the radon menu or the on-screen menu more so than the keys, but I do use it a pretty good bit.
I also have this thing called a Stream Deck, which Galen turned me on to, and it's a little keypad that has a LED screen behind it, or LCD, I guess it's LED, which is a touch screen, but basically the buttons force you to just, you can only press on so many buttons on the screen. And then underneath that button, you can make it look any way you want. You can give it any sort of label, and you can have it do just about anything. You can have it even do like a combination of things. So like if you wanted to clear your canvas, you could press one button, have it do select all, and then backspace all in one go, which is kind of handy. But then you can have it do some really crazy stuff, like you can have it change the color of the lights in your room and all kinds of stuff. So it's pretty cool.
It sounds really neat.
Deborah Colser's here. Good to see you, Deborah. She says hi, Skip and Aaron.
Hey. Is everybody staying safe?
Yeah, I hope everyone's in good health. We have 81 people watching right now. That's pretty cool.
Wow. It's amazing.
Kurt says that he's sure one of the cats will find your stylus.
They definitely will. They're not down here right now. Well, one is. I'm lucky they're not all down here. Aaron, I have 11.
11 cats?
Yeah,
That's crazy.
it is.
We had 2, but one of them passed away from old age, and the other one just disappeared one day. So
Having trouble. Go ahead.
We went from having 2 cats and a dog to no pets within like a year or 2. So
That's hard.
I can't imagine 11. That's, but you got a little pack. I don't know what they call a group of cats, but a little pack of cats.
Right. I'm not sure what they call them either. I knew at one time I'm not being able to paint with this brush like I usually can. This is weird. Let's try a side cut. This is a brush that it's an impasto brush, but see how it's fat on one side and thin on the other?
Mm-hmm.
So you can do these kind of floral sorts of things with it, which is kind of neat. But I'm not getting there.
It's the live stream gremlins.
Right. No, it's getting there now. I was having a little bit of probably just forgetting how to do it. And that's a little bit too light, but anyway, I'm getting there now. So let's find a darker green.
No idea
All
what
right.
I'm doing to this edge here.
So this brush was set up for color expression. That's why I kept getting white.
Ah. Yeah, I think that's a good thing to demonstrate, and I'm I should be frustrated when it happens, but anytime something happens, like, I'm trying trying to merge a layer and it's locked or something like that, then at least people can see. It doesn't matter how much you work with Painter. There's still going to be things where you'll get stuck on them for a minute, and then as long as you know what the cause of that frustration is, then you can fix it. But
Right. Well, this is what it was. It was set up for color expression, and I took it off, but now I like it, and so I need to set my color wheel to have the main color as this color right here, and then I can go to now that was my express key that I just did. I went to the secondary color, and I'm going to make it a lighter green. Go back. All right. So now with light pressure, I get that light, and with heavy pressure, I get the dark, and pressure in between, you get something in between. Not that that was interesting for anybody, but it was fun for me.
it's cool all the different things your brushes can do. Like it's really one of the most advanced applications for making art.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, I can see how that stuff's not for everyone. Like it can be kind of intimidating, but you don't even really have to use any of that stuff. Like just right out of the box, there are plenty of default brushes that can give you lots of looks. Um, that I think that ties in pretty well with a question that Rita had. What new feature or brushes in Painter 2020 do you use the most?
Oh, gosh. I have to remember what's new in 2020.
Well, let's just say features then.
You start. I can't think of anything that.
So I'll say the features that I use the most. Recently, I'd say thick paint I use almost all the time, and that's not new to Painter 2020, but it's still fairly new. And I love it. Like it's organic looking, but it's also random. Or not really random, but things happen that you can't necessarily control. So it's not a static brush, and there's so many things you can do to it to get the paint to break or to mix and so many things like that. And I remember before that came out, there were a lot of workarounds that I had to do to get those kind of looks. So I like that. But you might look at my workspace and it might look pretty crazy. I'll just show you real quick here. I got a lot of custom buttons and panels and all these different things. It looks like the cockpit of the space shuttle. But when I'm doing the average painting, I'm probably only using maybe half a dozen brushes. And then I have all these other specialty brushes that might give me a particular kind of look or be for a particular style of painting. But you'd be surprised how little I use when I'm painting feature and brush wise. And you use quite a bit of different media too. Like even this is what thick paint, and then underneath it is the watercolor.
Well, actually, this is there's liquid ink, watercolor, and this is not thick paint, but impasto.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like you, I'm using a lot more thick paint than I ever did. And I'm combining it a lot with watercolor, and I probably will do something like that in a minute. I can't quite get rid of watercolor. I don't know why I love it so much, but I do. And it is definitely difficult to really get it to work in Painter.
It's just like watercolor in real life.
Yeah, it is. It's very much as temperamental as the real stuff.
I wonder if that adds to the realism, or if people who work in watercolor don't want that. I've never been good at digital watercolor or traditional watercolor, so I just don't know.
It's a mixed bag, I think. See, um, I like working with regular watercolor, although, see, when I talk about traditional work, it's been 40, 50 years since I've done traditional work. I painted as a kid. I painted when I was in art school, but I became a potter. So consequently, I didn't paint. I painted uh, on pots, basically.
Hmm.
So um, I did, it's been a long time since I've done anything traditional.
I kind of, I'll do it here and there. Like every now and then I'm like, okay, I'll do some acrylic painting. I would say like, 99% of the painting I do is digitally. I enjoy traditional painting. It's just so much more convenient to just sit down at the computer and start painting rather than having to set up stuff and.
That's why I started. It was like I knew I was going to need to do something. I had retired for the second time, and I thought I would start painting, but then I found out about Painter, and I thought, oh, that's great. I don't have to do anything. That is too big. Sitting here making this flower, and it's driving me nuts. So we'll make another flat one.
Let's see. Uh, Deb says, "Hey, cousin Skip,
Hey,
you got lots of fans here. Sandy's here from Georgia, a friend of Ruth." She says,
oh, cool. Right. My friend Ruth had passed. Is that the Sandy that we're talking to?
She says your friend Ruth from Spain.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. I remember Sandy and I recently talked, but we had the mutual friend of Ruth. And I had met Ruth when I was living in Spain. She was an amazing woman. She was a speech therapist, but she fell in love with Maron de la Frontera because of the flamenco music. And so she came over and had somebody send her money, and she bought a bar
Ah,
and called it Bar Gestor for this guy named Diego de la Gestor, and he was lauded as the best of the flamenco guitarist. And so, and Ruth even took his nephew as her lover, and they lived together, and it was just this incredible group of people, and I just have so many wonderful memories of Ruth and Pepe for that matter, and Diego, the whole bit.
it's kind of cool that people are able to connect with you through your art and on YouTube and all that stuff.
Yeah, it is amazing, isn't it?
Uh, Tana says that she's learned so much from the both of us. We're two of her favorites to learn from.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Tana. Diana Carey says that she's into the cruise idea,
Me
our
too.
digital art cruise.
Yeah, now what I have to own up to is the fact that I am deathly susceptible to um, seasickness. So I would probably be sick the whole time.
No, yeah, I've never been on a cruise. I would imagine probably be the same for me. I
Well,
get
every time I've ever been on a boat, I've never been on a real big one, but every time I've been on one, it's it's the same thing. I mean, I've got to load up on Dramamine or something.
hmm I get car sick occasionally, so I figure a boat's probably going to be much worse.
If you're susceptible to car sickness, it will be the same sort of thing for sure. I've never done one of these where I've put something that realistic over the top of it. It's kind of
Hmm.
weird. And
Gives
you
it
know what else? Go ahead.
Gives it a nice background.
Yeah. I'm going to crop it. Let's see what it's going to look like if we crop it.
See here.
Ta-da.
Elizabeth says a group of cats is called a clouder. I did not know that.
I remember it now. Yes, that is what I remember.
A clouder of cats. Who comes up
Yeah.
with these words? That's what I want to know.
I don't know. The one I've always thought was funny is a murder of crows.
Mm-hmm. Well, that one kind of makes sense, you know. It's
They're murderous crows are.
yeah. I don't know.
Uh-oh.
They're associated with death and things like that. So
Uh,
I don't know what to do about the border on this thing. I think I want it to just fade out or something.
well, I'm going to stop on this one at this moment. That was sort of fun, different for me. It's an odd group of colors, though. Anyway, file, save as. We'll call it Unso with Roses. Except that is not what I typed. Save. And I'm going to go ahead and save it as a JPEG as well. I know it does that. You don't have to tell me every time. Okay, let's get rid of this. Ooh, we already had one open. I didn't remember that. Let's go to watercolor. Aaron, I'm not seeing you paint right now. What's going on?
You can't see the canvas?
I see the canvas. I just didn't see you making marks.
Oh, I was just checking out the comments real quick.
Oh, good.
Let's see. There's a couple questions which Galen answered. Thank you, Galen. About the video being recorded. It will be played back later, or you'll be able to watch it later with captions and all that. I don't want to jinx myself though, so if you can't use this link to watch the video after it's recorded, just know that maybe something happened, and if the live stream gets disconnected and I have to reconnect, then I'll re-upload it with the pieces spliced together. And if I end up doing that, then I'll send Skip the link and he can send that out.
Okay. Okay.
Tom has a question about the improved layer functionality in 2020, including layer position locking. He wants to paint on layers that cannot accidentally be nudged. I mean, I think if you lock a layer, it's locked, unless I'm...
It is. There are a couple of things that are not locked, like opacity of the layer. It's not locked. You can change that.
Yeah, as far as the position.
Right, but you can't move it.
Yeah. If what you're suggesting, Tom, is that the layer locate or position can be locked, but you can still paint on the layer, I don't think you can do that.
Oh yeah, no, it took me a minute to figure out what he was saying. Yeah, once it's locked to paint. But
Yeah.
you want to lock it so it's not going to move when you paint. I wonder if he has that happen often. I mean, what's happening is as you're going down on your tablet, you're hitting it a glancing blow, and that's what's moving the canvas.
With touch?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that just be moving that would be panning, though? It wouldn't be moving the layer on the canvas.
Well, it seems to do it on me when I hit a glancing blow, even though I'm using a paintbrush instead of the layer adjuster tool. And the canvas itself seems to just move slightly. And
But not
I don't know.
not the layer on the canvas, but the canvas itself.
No, I'm sorry. I keep saying canvas. It's the layer that moves.
Hmm.
It it's real odd what it does,
There's
actually.
there's a keyboard shortcut that toggles you to the layer adjuster while you're painting
Right,
with it. Like if you hold down Control, which you might be doing if you're doing Control Z a lot, so maybe it's in the process of painting really fast and using Control Z or another control command. Right now I'm holding Control and I can accidentally nudge the canvas around, even though I'm on the brush tool.
right.
So that could be it. One thing you could do if you wanted to lock the position, well, I guess that wouldn't help either. I was going to say you could create a new layer and then do pick up underlying color, and then you'd have the base layer locked. But then if you move that, then it becomes offset. Let's see here. We got lots of great questions. Keep them coming, everybody. Just so everybody knows, we're planning on doing a 2-hour session. So started at 9:30. So at 11:30 we'll be ending. That's Pacific time. Sean has a great question. Can you guys comment on how to create brushes by altering old ones?
It's the only way I know how to do it.
Well, he said more specifically, he says, I know Skip has some tricks involving altering files outside Painter.
Well, yeah, but that's a whole different story. It's not really about brush making. That's about, well, it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about express painting, that's one thing. If you're talking about trying to get your brush libraries into Painter from older versions or something like that, those are other tricks. And Aaron, you've got the same tricks. I've seen them uh, on your stuff. You know, where you take a zip file and rename it
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
brush library and all that stuff. Oops. Well, I just hit the microphone. Did it make a big noise?
Yeah, it's okay.
It's probably gonna make a noise again. I'm gonna move it so that I'm not hitting it. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, back to it. So what is it? I don't know what he's really wanting to know. I mean, if you want to know about how to make brushes, all brushes are basically made from another brush. There's no way for us to start a brush process. Now you can take your brush down to its simplest form, and that's as close to getting a clear brush to start making stuff with, but it's still a brush that's already developed. So the way I look at it, if I put a brush out there and somebody takes it and they tweak it, change it somehow in a way that they like, then it's their brush. You know, it's no longer mine. And that's just the way I've always thought about it.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to own a brush anyways, because anybody could go in not even intending to copy your brush, and there's only so many settings that you can program
Right.
aside from, let's say, a captured dab or an image hose nozzle.
Right. Absolutely. But I don't know. I just don't have this big deal about them.
Well, that's good. I mean, I think, you know, people need like, I think one of the great things about being an artist today is you can go on the internet and you can get so many free resources, and if there aren't people who are willing to share and they want to keep everything to themselves, then that doesn't really help artists as a whole. And I kind of thought about that as I was making tutorials. It's like, what I already knew what I was going to do. I already knew that I wanted to share brushes and tutorials and things like that. But I thought, like, there's people out there who could also say, well, my technique is so special or whatever that I'm only going to keep it to myself and things like that. And it's like, nah, it makes more sense just to share what you know with people rather than, hoard it to yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I really do. It's no fun.
Well, you can only do so much with your own brushes too. I mean, I'm sure you have loads of brushes that you might not use, and why not let other people use them?
Right.
Part of the fun is
Well,
creating brushes for other people to use, you know?
yeah, I agree. I do have tons of brushes. I will admit to that, more than I could ever possibly use.
Yeah, I've recently tried to, I'd been creating brushes every month for Patreon, and it's just kind of something I've been doing for a while, but I'm getting to the point now where it's like I got too many brushes, so I'm trying to do like more themed collections of brushes that can be specialty brushes that you'll just import as needed, and then when you don't need them for
Mhm.
that particular look or that project anymore, then put them away, like you'd put away physical brushes. Because otherwise, if I just keep adding brushes to my workspace, I'm going to have a workspace that's like 10 gigabytes, you know?
Well, I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 brush libraries.
Yeah, that's libraries. That's,
Yep.
I don't know how many brushes are within each library, but that's a lot.
And well, a lot within each library. And I mean, it's silly. And some of them I never even go in and look at anymore. Some I do.
Yeah, I'm trying to whittle it down a little bit. I think a lot of what I have, I probably don't need in my workspace, but occasionally I do need that brush, and if I don't see it there, I might not remember I have it.
Right.
So yeah, that's a tricky thing about brushes. But then as I said earlier, like I don't, what on for the average painting, I'll use a dozen brushes, and they're not even fancy brushes, There's like an airbrush and a blender, and
Yeah.
it's
I tend to use less and less, but the what I do is I tend to alter the brush as I go. It's not like I go and grab another brush that's going to be what I need. And right now, I can't find a paper I need. Where are you, paper? There you are. Okay.
see here. Raquel says looks great, Skip.
Thank you. Was that a
Uh,
long time ago or just recently?
it was a little while ago.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it was for this one or the previous one. Mandy wants to know what blender brushes do you use for thick paint? It
Um,
really, I mean, some of the brushes but can blend thick paint, but what I'm doing here is I've just gone ahead and just converted that thick paint layer to a default layer, and I'm just going to use the blenders on it, just regular blenders. And that works best for me. And then if I need to add additional thick paint layers on top, I'll do that.
well, I actually use thick paint blenders. And I also use brushes that tend to blend. Um, where am I? I'm in the wrong place. I need to be back on here. I'll show you on this canvas real quick. Okay, like this first brush is called number 2 thin wet bristle.
Hmm.
All right, so if I pick a color, oh, I've got this weird paper down, so it's gonna look strange. And I come in with another color You see, that blends.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm working with trying to get the brush to blend uh, as it paints. Now, this is blending a lot. So if I want it to not blend as much, I just come to the bleed and I drop that down. If I drop it down to 10, then I'm going to go right over the top. I still will blend a little bit, but not as much as it was when the bleed was up real high. But on top of all that, I also have 2 brushes that are blenders. And these are brushes that, see, smooth blender and grainy blender. And if you pull one of those up, the amount that of paint load is set to 0. So this brush is not going to paint. It's only going to blend. And that is a thick paint brush that blends.
That's cool.
Now, some people still don't like it. And I'm not sure really why, but I know Karen has a really neat way of working with blenders. She goes over the does a layer over the top and uses pick up underlying color, stuff like that. I'm not sure exactly how she does all of it, but it's a very neat way of working. Now this is my grainy blender, so I'm going to be picking up the paper underneath, but still blending the paint as we go. So that's my trick. And those brushes, they're called Skip's Ultimate Thick Paint, and they're available on my blog. So I need to get rid of that and come back to what I was doing.
Mandy says she's really liking both of these paintings. Thank you, Mandy.
Yeah. Okay, I need to get rid of that.
Sean's imagining everybody lugging their desktops onto the cruise ship when we do our cruise.
Yeah. No, you probably have to pay so much to go that you would have to demand them to make them for us. You know, give us laptops and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they'd probably be cheapos and they wouldn't. Oh, shoot. Undo. Ah. Ooh, that's not what I want. All right, now you better work this time.
That's the Curl Painter master secret is you threaten the brushes. So you better work now. It's the audio. That's the new audio brush feature.
Oh, stop. I keep trying to undo something that was done earlier or after that was done. And so when I try to do it, it doesn't work. I don't know why this is not doing like it's supposed to, but it's not. Probably will in a minute.
Yeah, I was just having that with this brush. It was too small, I think, and then when I made it bigger, now it's working.
Damn it.
Yeah, that's the.
I'll tell you what, let's do this.
It's the joy of technology.
There. Got rid of what I wanted to get rid of. Okay, now, why is this not working?
keep going back and forth between liking this and not liking the painting.
I think it looks great.
Thank you. It's kind of the tricky thing about non-objective art is, you know, you don't really have a standard to compare it to. Like, you know, I'm not going based off of a photo, so I don't have that goal of trying to get it to look like the photo. I'm just trying to I guess just develop it with imagination step by step until it looks right.
Finally. All
Yay.
of that to get that one thing. You have to put down, this is real wet oils, and you have to put down a lot of paint, keep painting before it gets enough so that it will actually run.
Hmm. I was trying that the other day because you'd showed me those drips, and I was like, I can't get it to run. And
Right.
that's the trick.
Yep, that's the trick. You got to really, excuse me, keep painting. And see, that wasn't quite enough. So I'll go back and we'll do it again. Got a tickle. Time for a sip of coffee.
I'm on tea now. I was drinking like energy drinks and stuff for a long time, like mostly in my 20s and then a little bit into my early 30s, but these things are so bad for you.
Right.
I don't really like coffee that much, so tea is like all I have left for caffeine.
I like tea a lot. I drink it as well. And it goes through phases. Well, it's just not wanting to do like it's supposed to. So what we're going to do is switch to watercolor. Just driving me crazy. And I will take the regular layer and the liquid ink layer, and I'm going to drop them to the canvas and then lift them to a watercolor layer. And then I'm going to go to Looks Runny Water. And we're going to see if that will work for us.
I don't know what to do to these edges.
Okay, we're beginning to get somewhere. So let's give it some more.
Carrie says she's learned a lot from both of us too. Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah, Carrie's in your neck of the woods, isn't she?
She is. I've visited with her a couple times. I actually used to live right over by her. But yeah, I've moved a little bit farther away now from Seattle. Seattle got crazy expensive.
Yeah, any of the cities would. But isn't that one of the places everybody wants to live, Seattle?
Yeah, there's a lot of people moving here for tech jobs and stuff like that, and so it's creating a lot of demand for housing. And we have a pretty bad homelessness problem here where there's like lots of people who don't have a place to live. And then it's super expensive to live in the city, and there's lots of people who have to work in the city. And then now with, you know, everything going on with the coronavirus,
Right.
it's even worse because, you know, if you live in the city, even if you get a $1,200 check, if you're renting a house by yourself, your rent is like probably double that at least. So
Okay, I got some little drippies going.
wow, that's pretty cool.
One of the neat things when you're working with this, not real wet watercolor, but the other type, if you'll press your space bar, it'll cause it to go ahead and render.
Yeah, that's odd how that works.
I know.
Can you hold it down, or do you have to hit it rapid fire? I forget.
I have to hit it rapid fire. Sometimes I'll hold it down. It seems like it's going to work, but it doesn't. So if I do the rapid fire, it seems to work a little better. Anyway, I think that's kind of interesting looking.
Yeah. I wonder if that has something to do with, like, while you're panning it does something to the resolution of the painting, or like how it's displaying it or something. So
I don't know.
weird how that works. I think it's just amazing that we can even paint digitally like this anyways, you know?
It is.
I had a good question for you. What's the first version of Painter that you ever used?
10.
10? Okay.
Yeah, I haven't been using Painter that long. What, about 8 years, something like that?
Yeah, I think 11 was the first one that I used. Remember the
Well,
box? The box
yeah.
it had hands counting to 11, so one of the hands had like an extra finger on it.
Well, 11 came out right after I started. And so I did use 10 for a couple of months, and then 11 came out. Okay, let's see what this does. I don't like it already. That's too dark and too messy.
Let's see here in the comments. We got some more questions. Rafael is here from Chile. Good to see you, Rafael. Michelle says this is a great distraction from the stuff she should be doing. Tana's got a good question. Did either of you have a computer background before you started digital art?
I was trained as a potter in art school, and so I did not have background. But in the early or mid 80s, I started reading about this thing called PCs and all that. And I remember reading that they said they would be able to digitize stars, and it would look like the real person and all that. And I was fascinated with it. So I read a bunch of stuff, and I bought my first computer in 84 to 86, somewhere around there. And so I read about them for about 3 years before I actually bought the first one. So I had a little bit of knowledge. How about you, Aaron?
It takes a little bit of diving into things that I think are not quite digital art, but are kind of art and computer related. I had a toy that was, I actually still have one, or I bought one on eBay, but it's basically like a drawing pad that you would plug into your TV or your VCR or whatever when you used to use coaxial. And when you draw on it with a pen, it's very much like a Wacom tablet, but they're very, very simple. It's like a kid's toy where you can color in pictures and things like that. So I didn't even have a computer at that point. I think my only computer experience was maybe in like 4th grade. We had those old computers with the black screens with the green text on them and stuff. And I had maybe played a couple of educational games on them, but just like at the time, I just really I didn't know much about computers. So I did have a little bit of experience with digital art before having gotten into computers. But then later in, I think it was 5th grade, I had moved to Seattle, and then in Seattle, there's, people were more into computers here. So at school we had like a computer lab, and you could just go and play, and they had all kinds of stuff like Kid Picks, which is a thing where you can make little stamps and do drawings, and then they had these stories where you could type out a story, but then you could take different elements like backgrounds and characters and kind of put them together, you know, like as if you had a bunch of stickers or something. So there were a lot of things that you know, at the time I didn't think of as digital art or things that would contribute to me getting into digital art, but they actually did have a lot of influence. I also had a video game called Mario Paint, which was a mouse and like a mouse pad, and then you could do things like you could draw pictures and make animations and simple music and stuff like that. So when I go back and I think about that, you know, I actually have been doing digital art for a long time, technically speaking, but it wasn't until more recently that I actually, you know, discovered that you can make art on a computer. And so by that point I had, you know, I had like a Macintosh computer that my dad got me when I was a teenager, and so I'd had some computer experience. I knew how to use a computer by the time I actually discovered a drawing tablet and realized that I could paint on the computer.
Well,
And I think it does help, you know, trying to do digital painting when you don't know how to use a computer can be pretty frustrating, I would imagine.
yeah, for sure.
It's frustrating even if you do know how to use a computer, you know. So why there's that argument that's still going on where some people say digital art is easy and some people say it's difficult, and it's like it is what it is. If you don't know if you don't know much about traditional painting or digital painting, it's going to be difficult, but the more you know, the easier it's going to feel. And they all have their pros and cons. Skip and I are here trying to figure out how to get our brushes to work, and you just pick up a real paintbrush in real life and dip it in some paint and you're good. You're not going to have those problems.
Right. I don't know what I'm looking for, but it's not what I'm getting. That's closer.
I think that's great that you can try something, decide you don't like it, and try something else, and you're not stuck with that experiment.
Right. Okay, let's bring it into real gray. And come up to the very top, darker, and then lighter. Okay, I know what I need to do. I've got to change this to none. I can't let the brush get smaller because it's not allowing me to do lighter and lighter. That's probably going to be just almost perfect. I like the running that I'm getting up here, but it's not, I want it to come all the way down more. And I think if I put it more in the center,
It's interesting how you can put so much variability into the pressure of the stroke and how you paint it, and it looks a certain way while you're doing it, but then you let go and then something happens, and you've done it so many times that you kind of have an idea of what's going to happen, but it takes a lot of experience. That's cool.
No,
It looks like layered clouds.
Right, I like this one, but I'm going to get rid of it because it needs to be on its own layer. Oh gosh, I got rid of too much. Let's bring that back. Come on, come back. There we go. So I only want to delete the cloud. There we go. And add a new watercolor layer. Okay, now I think I'm going to finally get what I want. I never spend this much time on a painting. I don't know what's going on. It's the company. I'm too interested in what you're doing.
Oh, mine
Oh,
crashed. Yeah.
yeah, I was going to say what happened.
Well, live streaming plus running Corel Painter eats up a lot of resources, so that tends to happen every time I do anything. But it's always an opportunity to show off Corel Painter's autosave feature when your painting crashes. I would say
Right.
99% of the time you're going to get your painting back with the layers intact. So, it's a bit of an interruption, but not a big deal.
Okay, now I've got what I wanted originally. What I did is put it on its own layer, and because I couldn't get the variation I needed, I'm reducing the opacity, and I'm getting clouds up there. That looks pretty good. But I need to do another watercolor layer.
I'm lucky that there's this backup feature because I have not saved this at all. It's bad.
I haven't
And
mine either.
I usually save a lot more often, but when I'm demonstrating, I don't always remember those things. So, let's see, doing some fancy stuff where I can go full screen on you so people don't see me fumbling around here. Okay, so just for the fun of it, anytime this happens to you, you can always search your computer for recovered, and you should get a folder called Painter, whatever the version is, recovered files. And if your application crashed, I can't guarantee 100% of the time, but most of the time there should be something saved there. And if you were to open it, you should get all of your layers back. Now in this case, I'd already flattened everything, so I don't have any layers. The only thing that I noticed that changes is the color profile often defaults, so you have to go into Canvas and you have to reassign whichever color profile you were using. Because if you don't, the color it'll be different than it was before Corel Painter crash. But that's not bad. I have lost many, many hours of paintings from stuff crashing, so I'm all about autosave before crashes.
Yeah, me too, but I hadn't done it either.
You better save.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Those gremlins are coming for you next. That's just how it is. You're live streaming.
As soon as I get this one bit of lightness in here, I will save.
I think one of the best things you can do as someone who's trying to show somebody how to do something is to make mistakes or have things happen.
I agree.
And it shows people how to fix that themselves.
Yeah, I rarely edit boo-boos out.
Yeah, I try to. It can be hard sometimes to try to make a linear explanation because some things, like especially my painting process, isn't always linear. So that's really a struggle to feel like I'm not like working on a tree and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh wait, let's go back to the background behind the tree. I feel like I got to do it Bob Ross style or something and just do it all in one go. Trying to straighten out my circle here with distortion tools. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this. I kind of like it, but I kind of don't.
I like it. I think it's great.
I think it's the border. I'm feeling like maybe I should crop it in a circle, but then that kind of defeats the point of having done the circle first because that's the foundation of the painting.
Right. Well, it's one of those things you're going to have to sort of play with. What you want to do is Google Onso
Hmm.
and look at some of the stuff that's done. It's really uh, very different looking. Um,
I think the problem is I wasn't one with my painting, and I didn't achieve that level first.
that was it.
Let's
Okay.
see. Tom's clarifying on his question earlier about locking the position. He says Photoshop and Affinity Designer both have layer position locking.
Yeah. No.
He paints with paper textures that get knocked out of whack. I see.
Yeah. And you unfortunately you're not going to be able to do anything about that because we don't. Painter doesn't have that function.
Well, if you could figure out what it is that's causing the canvas to move, and if it is indeed control, then I mean,
Right.
I don't know what you can do about that because probably using control pretty often. You could make those keyboard shortcuts something else, or yeah, I don't know. It's probably more trouble than it's worth. Posey has the same issue with the layer moving. Doesn't happen often, and it is not so it's so noticeable that they can easily correct it. It is the layer that moves, not the canvas.
Yeah, I never really knew why it was doing it.
And it sounds, yeah, there's another person who says they have that issue. I've never noticed that. Maybe it's just that I've never noticed it, but
One thing you can do though is Control Z brings it right back
yeah. But
if you notice it.
yeah, if you don't notice it though, and it's so subtle, like if it's a matter of you're using a paper texture that needs to be aligned every time, I can see that being a problem. You know, I think it's always good to share feedback too, like for people who have feature suggestions. I'm sure you could probably email Corel and let them know, you know, your feedback, or go to the Painter Factory forums and post some suggestions there. It's always good to share feedback with companies if you have a way to improve their product. Michelle says, she wants to know if there's a way to lock your canvas in place so you don't accidentally move it when you place your hand on the Wacom. Not aside from just disabling touch with a short with an express key, which I have an express key on any device that has touch that disables and enables touch for that reason. Sometimes you just don't want it. Sean's clarifying the question about editing old brushes to make new brushes. He remembered that Skip mentioned editing the files for changing the flow expression. Maybe during the bit he had on how to make the auto gradient flow follow new flow patterns.
I think he's talking about in the gradient panel, the paint expressions.
Mm-hmm.
What's it called? Is that what you think he's talking about?
Could be.
That's a very complex activity.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
I think his overall question is he's just wondering how other people are creating brushes, and he doesn't understand how they change the settings to make it do what it's doing.
Right. And there's so many settings that it's hard to know that. But what you do is you just get in there and you start. You take one brush and you basically, the quickest way I can tell you to do this is you start by, let me open up something. Okay, so really you start with this general brush control panel. And that tells you what your dab type is and the stroke type and the methodology and the subcategory and the source. These four things kind of make your brush happen in a certain area. And you have these dab types, you have tons of them. And the minute you change the dab type, this brush will change completely, because right now it's a liquid ink flow particle brush. But if I change that to anything else, it may not even be liquid ink anymore. And that's what you do is you get in and you grab a brush and whatever it's got set up here, change it to something else and paint. And just say, that's what that did. Now change it to another one and paint. And you just sort of start building an understanding of what's going on. Now you can also get involved in a class or talk to somebody. I learned most of what I know about brushes from Jenny Brown and David Gell. And it was through emails and talking back and forth and stuff like that. And they were just really nice to share all that stuff with me. And, just talking with people.
Yeah, there really are, that really is the two main approaches, is like you experiment and just hope that you stumble upon a brush that looks cool and then you save it, or you begin to develop some understanding of what each component of the brush engine can do and how it affects those brushes. And you're right, like a class is probably going to be the best way to learn that stuff because there's so much to it and you need to be led through it step by step to see how each of those different elements of a brush engine work together, because you can change one slider or one property and get a completely different brush. And I think as a person who's created a lot of brushes, you have to have some understanding of what those properties do. Otherwise, you're going to be just kind of shooting in the dark, and you'd be spending an hour moving sliders and have no result at all or very little change on the brush. But once you start to learn what some of those properties can do, you can actually have a vision of a brush and make it happen, or get as close as you can get to executing that vision. But there are lots of great classes out there. Skip has classes on Digital Art Academy. And so it should, it's just a matter of wanting to learn it.
I don't have a class on brushes right now. I've got one started, but I haven't got one finished. And the main reason I keep dragging my feet on it, beside the fact that it's just very hard to teach because of the complexity. But there's just been a lot of stuff going on in my life that kind of stopped all of this from happening.
Mm-hmm.
So it is what it is. I need to go underneath this instead of on top.
And I think the easier approach is it's fine. It's fine to not necessarily understand everything in Painter and be able to just experiment. Like, you're going to learn a lot through trial and error, maybe more than you'd learn from someone else teaching you. And, like Skip said, he had advice from other people and other people showed him what to do, but he's probably also learned a lot just by experimenting, right, Skip?
Right. Most of it has been experimentation.
Yeah.
Once you get just some basic understanding, then everything is like experimentation.
And not every session where you sit down at the computer to paint has to be to make a completed painting. It's okay to make paintings for practice or just to test out stuff. I keep thinking I'll start another one, and then I'm finding things to do on this one.
Well, I'm fixing to make this one a lot wetter because it's just not doing like it's supposed to. Okay, so what do I want here? That can go down. Viscosity can go down. Evaporation can go down. Flow resistance, we'll leave that. Settling rate, we'll leave. I think.
How these guys come up with this stuff, like how do you sit down and look at watercolor paint and how it moves and then assign its individual properties to a slider?
I don't know.
That kind of stuff blows my mind.
I mean, it really is amazing that this stuff works at all.
And it's come a long way too. Since Painter 10 or 11.
All right, since Painter 1.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the brush engines alone, most of the stuff out there, yay!
Look at that go.
I've been trying all day to get this to work. Okay, and I don't know why I even want that bleed, but I've been doing some bleeding lately, and I find it fascinating.
The cool thing is, and I think you're one of the best examples of this, is Painter comes out and like the people who make it, I'm sure, have some sort of idea of like what it could do or what it should do. But then you come along and you can make it do stuff like this where it's like no one even knew it could do that until you discovered it by experimenting, you know?
Right. I have been kind of told that before, that now that's going to be fine if I get the color right. That they've sometimes said they've been surprised at what they've seen occur.
It's pretty cool. Can you really say that for people nowadays about traditional media? Is anyone going to take real oil paint and like have some breakthrough way of using it? Probably not, because it's been used for so long. But a new version of software comes out every year, or every couple of years or whatever. So that gives people an idea of, or it gives artists an opportunity to kind of pioneer techniques or ways of working with digital media. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I don't know. People might go back to making their own paint or something, and that would do it, or using some, other technique with painting, like some, I don't know, like they're using other material to rub into the paint or whatever. I know that in pottery, we were preached at about the fact you couldn't, because we use plaster sometimes to set up stuff, you had to make sure you didn't get plaster in your clay because it would explode in the firing and you would get these little pit marks all over your clay. And I mean, I can't tell you how that was ingrained into our minds until this guy who came along who wasn't trained in pottery. And he took his plaster and mixed it dry into clay and then mixed it all up together. And what he got was this clay that would stay wet for a while, that he could then pull it into odd shapes, and then it would set up with the plaster.
Mm-hmm.
And he could fire it, and nothing happened. As long as you mixed it in wet, mixed it dry, and then mixed it in wet, it worked perfectly. Who knew? I mean, all of a sudden somebody had come through with a breakthrough because he had not been trained.
Yeah.
that was something you shouldn't do. Let's see if we can make this bleed in here some sort of way. I didn't know I was in the same.
It's really cool the way it all blends together.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to have to go back to default. It works fine, except right up here bothers me. So what I can do is I can use my trusty eraser, probably erase this. Oh, see the little square things that are happening? I'm about to get a problem. Look at that. Why is that? There we go. I just wasn't doing it hard enough. All right, that kind of looks better.
So Sean has a kind of another point that I think is good to discuss about the brushes. So part of his uncertainty about new brushes is grounded in how many brushes that Corel sells and other people create. So I think kind of like the way you have to look at it is anybody can make a brush. Like anybody can make a brush. You could set a monkey in front of Corel Painter and have it just bang at the keys and it'll make a brush, and it might make a really cool brush. But you have to have some like idea of like what a useful brush is. What brushes are people going to want? How do you take the settings and make a brush look like moss? How do you take what settings can you change to make that moss brush then look like hair on a dog? And so yeah, anybody can make a brush, but if you want to be able to do it and do it well and like have collections of brushes and brushes that not only look a certain way but are actually practical, it takes some talent and it takes some experience. And so it might look like there's just people churning out brushes left and right, and that's something that anybody can do. And that's true. But once you try to do it yourself, you realize that there's more to it than that. And so, you know, it's like anything else. You can take any other raw material in life that anybody can get, dig out of the ground or go and buy at the store for 10 cents a pound and make something, but you have to know how to do it, you know? I was thinking the other day, like I'd like to take the faucet off my sink and put on a taller one. I don't know how to do that. I'm not going to try to learn. I'll find someone who's really good at it and let them do it and pay them for their time, you know, because I've got things that I'm into and that I'm willing to dedicate my time to learning, and things that I'm not. So I think that's, you know, it's a good way to look at it, because then it's like if you feel like anybody can make brushes, that's inspiring. If anybody can do it, you can do it too. It's just you got to experiment. Sojourning says, I guess the obsession of collecting brushes is the same for both the analog artist and the digital artist. There's always room for one more brush.
Yeah.
That's kind of the other element of it too, that, you know, I've kind of touched on a few times. Like, yeah, you can make a lot of brushes and you can get a lot of different effects, but at the end of the day, do you really need 50 brushes, or can you make most of your painting with 5, you know? And that really just comes down to the individual and what they prefer to do. I think you could download every single brush that's out there and buy every brush pack and have a million brushes, and it's cool from like a collectability standpoint, and it's nice to be able to go in and say, okay, I've got this exact brush that can do this exact thing, but it also can be a distraction, I think. I'm finding for myself at least. I have a lot of brushes where I'm like, after the fact, I should have used that brush. Like, why did I paint that tree? I have a brush that makes a tree. It's because I forgot about it, you know?
Yeah, I do that all the time. I really do. And I go back periodically and just sit there and start painting with brushes, and I'll find a brush and I think, oh my God, that's beautiful. And I'll use it for a week and forget it again. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's just amazing.
Posey says, always informative to watch both of us paint. They love seeing each of our styles because they're so different, yet both excellent examples of art. Thank you, Posey.
Yeah, that was nice.
Some people watching from Washington here. Mark lived in Bothell for a while, but came back to Colorado. Kurt's in Tacoma. And Raquel's here in Washington too. Her son lives in Seattle. She wishes he would leave. Yes, Seattle's not a good place to be right now. It's a really nice city, and I like it, and, you know, I don't know, it has a there's a lot to do there, I guess, when the economy's open, but now that everything's kinda shut down, all that stuff's gone, and then there's all the parks and stuff, and there's some that you can go to and some that you can't, and so a lot of what there is to enjoy about Seattle is kind of gone, and then all that's left is extravagant rent, absurd rent, you know? And that's why people are paying a lot to live here, is to have all those things to do, and now they don't have them.
Yeah, it's sad.
There,
But
one thing I can say though is there are a lot of nature spots here, like even just peppered in throughout the neighborhoods and stuff. You know, there's trees and little hiking trails and stuff, so that's nice.
right.
Do you usually do the stamp signature on everything?
No, just on the things that have a sort of an Asian feel to them, uh, which this is a little busy, but it kind of has an Asian feel. And I most of the time I forget to do a signature, but I have, well, I've closed it. I have another one. Um, yes, I want to commit the transformation. I have these essays, and I'll use them from time to time, as opposed to this funny square thing.
Yeah, I thought about, or I had considered doing that just in the image portfolio, just having my
Whoops.
signature. I kind of like to hide it places. I don't really like signing things. I feel like it is a distraction, but every now and then I will. It just kind of depends on the piece.
What it is, but in the case of these written and chops and stuff with the Asian work, you're supposed to find the exact spot that makes it all work,
Yeah.
and that's not always possible. But they're not in traditional places. Now this is fine. It's just it's got to be a little more subtle. And I can't decide. Doesn't look right anywhere.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem sometimes.
Found it.
Does it have to be red?
No, it doesn't have to be. Traditionally, you see them with red ink stamp and all that. But I frequently will take the underpainting panel and change it to whatever color is working. But if I'm in a kind of a black and white situation, then I will leave it red. Well, that's the end of that one, I think. It's kind of wasn't wasn't what I wanted, but it's okay. So this is black like watercolor. Cancel. I've already saved it, so I just want to do an iterative save, and then we'll do a JPEG. I know that. Okay, that one's done. Let's do another one. What time is? What time do we have?
It's
How much time?
11:09. We're gonna go till 11:30,
Oh, good. I can do it.
or right around there.
We'll do something crazy, something fun.
Yeah, let's get crazy.
There we go. All right, we'll do the same size here. And let's go to, we'll leave this white. Put the paper in, lock it. I want to go to I think it's architectural. That wasn't what I wanted. There we go.
It's cool. Looks like a feather.
Yeah. Let's do it the other way. That didn't work. Still okay.
Sure what else to do to mine. I think I'm gonna crop out the border since I don't like that and maybe paint it in again. That's what I need. Maybe even just cropping it with a hard edge would look good.
Oh, I think I know what I want to do.
I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put like a stencil over it, kind of. There we go.
Love it. Wow, you've got so much depth and stuff in there. It's so beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's just the outside that I'm not happy with. The inside's it's coming together. Some of that stuff I can make into land. Oh, that's really cool. You can make an animal out of just a few strokes.
Yeah, it's fun. Nope, that doesn't look right.
Is that all one brush or is that different brushes?
This was all one brush, and now I have a second brush.
Okay.
This is one of my most fun things to do, is to try and make something real quick out of a simple stroke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a challenge. There are a lot of nice brushes that they just do so many random things anyways. I think that's the beauty of working with Corel Painter. The brushes aren't just like stamp brushes that repeat and
Right.
maybe flip or rotate or something. Like the particle brushes actually, they do whatever they want to do pretty much,
Yeah, some of them are controllable, but you're right. Most of them are just, craziness.
To be able to harness that craziness is pretty cool and like actually get it to look like something. I would say for this piece, I've used, I don't know how many brushes, not very many. Oh, I guess it resets, so it's not counting some of the brushes that I picked.
Right.
So I've probably used under 10 for this, maybe more like 6 or 7, I think. So you can see, even though I have a million brushes in my workspace, I don't always need them.
Well, I've used 3 in this. That was kind of fun. Let's do another something. Save as bird.
Yeah, what to call stuff sometimes, that's tricky.
Right.
Especially when you're starting something, it's good to save stuff, but you don't always know what it's going to be. And
Right.
but I mean, if you're even giving something a name and saving it intentionally, then that's good, because a lot of people don't do that, and you can't find your artwork later.
Right. Well, my icons are messed up right now. I have to go in and try to get that fixed. They don't show.
Yeah, it's frustrating that there's Windows issues that coexist with Corel Painter issues, and then separate Wacom issues, and seems like every time something gets changed, something breaks, and makes it hard to work. I feel fortunate that I've never really had anything that's like kept me from painting. I've had things that have been, irritating to deal with, but nothing that's like completely disabled my tablet or Corel Painter.
This is a brush that I love.
Oh, yeah, it's kind of like holly or something.
Well, it's actually going to be like an iris.
Uh-huh. Oh, I see.
See?
And you can do that with just one brush.
Right. And you can do it in colors and all that too, but
Mm-hmm.
or you can do all kind of things with it. I like it because it sort of looks like there's some kind of photograph that you can do that gives you these um, you can look through the image.
Oh, where it's kind of like X-ray style, you can see through it.
Yeah, and this has that same sort of look. This was called Iris Blade. It was in my Eastern watercolor, but anyway, I like it because it's so much fun to use, and you can do. It's not good. Let's see. That's more like it. That'll work.
Robert has a good question. How long do either of us take to make a piece?
As little time as possible. I can't spend hours like a lot of people can. So I really do try to spend just a little bit of time.
Yeah, if you spend too much time on one piece, then that's all you got to show for your year, And there's no right or wrong way to do it. It just depends on what your objectives are as an artist. Some people want to do really detailed work and other people don't. From practical experience, let's just say like sharing a really complex painting on social media versus sharing one that took me like an hour to do. Some of the shorter, easier paintings that I don't necessarily like feel or that impressive get more likes or get more positive feedback than ones where I spend a lot of time and I'm absolutely sure that everyone's going to love it. So from a success standpoint, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you put more time and effort into your art that you're going to get any more out of it. You might get more satisfaction out of doing it one way or another, and I think that's what's important. You know, it should feel good to be an artist. And there's plenty of people who like simple art and plenty of people who like complex art, and you know, there's overlap here and there. So to answer that question, I would say it really depends on the piece, because I do so many different things that there's art that I'll spend, you know, very little time on, and then there's other things where my goal is to do a portrait or something and have it look like the person. Then I might spend many more hours on it. And then in the past, when I used to do stuff that was more complex, like not necessarily more detailed, but had more characters and more to the background and all that, those I would easily spend 30, 40 hours on, because I'd come back to them in sessions. But yeah, I'd say on average, like probably under 10 hours for most of the more detailed stuff I've done recently. It's hard to say because it's not like I sit down with a timer and like every time I start painting, I turn it on, you know? There's also time where I'll sit and I'll look at something, you know, it's like the work in progress, and I'll put it on my phone and then I'll look at it throughout the day and try to think about where the mistakes are and what I would do to change it. And I don't know if you count that as time. But, you know, I think for a lot of people who are trying to improve their painting, I think spending more time on it is a good thing, because a lot of mistakes happen if you rush through paintings. If your goal is to like paint realistically or copy a photo or something like that, you know, you need time to be able to make those observations, especially if you don't have the experience of painting that subject a lot. You know, you could paint a face and then think it looks really good, and then look at it the next day and realize that the nose is too long, or the eyes are crooked, or, you know, something like that. So the more time you spend on it, the more of an opportunity you have to see those flaws. And because you're working digitally, you can come back to stuff. You can go in and you can fix just the nose or just the mouth. And so I think impatience is kind of, it's a pretty big obstacle that gets in the way of people improving, myself included. You know, I can definitely look at stuff where I just rush through it and see that I missed a detail that's really obvious, and it just happens.
I do that a lot. But I do rush through stuff, that's for sure.
You know, that there's value to either approach, because in being loose and spontaneous, that shows in the artwork. You know, that's what makes art look like art. And people like gestural stuff, you know, like you're making something look like flowers with fewer brushstrokes than it would take someone who was going to try to, like, you know, make it look like a black and white photo.
Yeah, these are they're impressions of whatever.
For landscapes, I prefer my landscapes to look like paintings, and the more I can get it to look like a painting, the better, you know. Like
Right.
if I was going to try to do this realistically, I would have started with a bunch of layers, and I'd probably still be on the background right now.
Yeah.
You know. But then I got all these really nice accidental shapes that happened for trees, and really the whole composition was an accident. I didn't intend for there to be a big log here, and I didn't even intend for it to be a river or even necessarily a landscape, and it just ended up being that way.
Well, I have mixed deals with all of this. For instance, um, here's a landscape. Now that there's nothing in there that took a lot of time or anything. I mean, the brush strokes are all just textured. It's really an abstract, but it reads landscape to me, and that's the way I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't think I can paint like you can. You have that flair of bringing this realism to the canvas. I don't think I can do that.
I don't know. I look at it and I see the same level of realism. It's just expressed in a different way.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
I,
I'm,
I I would say if anything, I'm going for more of that look, and that's what's difficult for me to do is to be more gestural about it because I think I have so many hangups from earlier in my art career of like trying to do things a certain way or like trying to be, you know, trying to
mhm.
be like have my paintings look like a certain artist and things like that. And if you look at my earlier landscapes, they have such like a crispness to them where I'm using all these layers, and then as I start to move away from that and use things like color gamut masking and like just using like this one brush that can add paint and blend and just being more gestural, I'm actually a lot happier with my work.
Right. Well, yeah, you definitely have a lot of gestural looks in it, but the overall imagery that you get is so beautiful, so
Thank you.
nice. Now,
Well, I,
I compared what you're doing up there to this one, which I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, it does read as sort of as a landscape. These were done with audio brushes, and I had really very little control at all.
yeah.
You know, it's crazy.
Well, I see a lot of detail in that. I think maybe it's, you know, there's more room for my imagination to play in yours because there's things that you have to kind of pick out yourself, whereas I've spent more time taking an area and like saying, okay, that blob is going to be a pine tree, whereas yours is more open to interpretation, and I think that in a way makes it look more like art.
I don't know. I like stuff like this. That's just. I mean, it's just the whole thing is really a gesture.
Hmm.
It's just you either get it or you don't. I mean, a lot of people don't like this sort of style, and that's fine. Um,
Have you heard much about those 3D paintings that they can do where it makes the paint look elevated up off the canvas?
yes, matter of fact, 2 or 3 years ago, I sort of Karen got me involved with working with one of the companies, and but it never looked right. Now, what they're doing now is much better, but I'm not involved with what they're doing now like I was earlier. Um, but I'm excited about that. I really am. I definitely want it to. Uh,
That last one you showed looked like it would be a good candidate.
all right, because of the impasto,
Yeah, it has those nice thick marks on it.
right? Now I really like stuff like this. To me, that's really fun because it's got watercolor up here and it's got thick paint all in here,
Hmm.
and it's
Remind
kind of moody.
Yeah, it's like a lake uh, when the sun's going down.
Hmm.
Big rock you can sit on there in the foreground.
Right. Actually, there is a version that has a monk sitting right here
Nice.
meditating.
That's a good place to do it.
Right. But that's not this one. I don't know where he is, actually. I was surprised when I saw that he wasn't there. I've got so many paintings. I don't try to sell and I don't print, but I have all this stuff in the computer. The reason I don't uh, print is because I really think we should um, display our work as we do it. Um, does that make sense?
Yeah, if it's digital work, it should just be digital.
Right. Yeah. And but and there's some galleries that are beginning to show that. Yeah, look how simple this is. Just these. There were like three brush strokes, and then I
Hmm.
did the little bamboo, and I put a gradient over the top, and that probably took 30 minutes. And I like this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks cool. Like you can imagine a lot more detail sometimes than you can extract from when somebody shows it too clearly, I think.
Well, for me, it makes the viewer part of the process for
Yeah.
sure. Um,
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm trying to do more is like be less intentional about what I'm putting in. That and it's hard for me. I mean, I've gotten better about it, but kind of all over the place with the type of stuff I paint anyways. Sometimes I am painting realistically and then sometimes I'm not. But that's just how I am. I don't like any one thing so much that I want to do it all the time. I really like variety.
yeah, I do too. And here's a little wilder
Ooh, that's really nice
thing.
colors.
Yeah, I like these colors. Thank you.
The contrast is
But
good too, where everything's like super bright on the light side and then on the shadow side it gets blocked by the vase and the plants.
thank you. I like playing with lots of textures. I don't think I've ever shown this anywhere. I don't remember. You do something and you forget about it. And while I'm sitting here looking for imagery, um,
I've got all kinds of stuff like that. I'm like, did I painted that? I guess so.
yeah,
It's on my computer.
right. Well, sometimes I'll have a student's work on and I'll think I did it and realize that I didn't.
Mm-hmm. There's been a few people who have taken my courses where they've sent me stuff and I'm like, wait a minute, did I paint that or did they paint that? And I got to look really close and go, okay, you did a good job. There's a lot of times where they send me stuff and it looks way better than mine too.
Oh, this is bad. I didn't finish it. I just saw it up there and I thought, I wonder what this is. And it needs more work. There's a lot of unfinished stuff. But that's fun to take. Let me open that back up. Let me show you
Do you
the
have
brush.
are most of these on your website?
No, no. They really have not seen the light of day. I had some holiday brushes that we gave out, and I've got a couple that are kind of fun that I've been using on old canvases. Where is it? It's up here. Anytime, painter, just take your time. All right, it's in the holiday. Here it is. And the funky monkey, I think. Yeah. Watch what this brush will do. It's just crazy. Let me see what kind of layers I've got going here. Okay, it's all on the canvas. That's fine, but I tell you what, we'll lift it. Control A, clip. Okay, and then I'm going to duplicate it so I've got something to get back to. And we'll turn that off. That one's just white. Come back up here. Okay, go back to my brush and make it a little smaller. Okay.
Whoa. That is funky.
Oops, getting all that white on that side, but it's all right. And from the bottom too. But look at how we've suddenly got like a forest,
Yeah, it's like instant trees.
right?
And those are the kind of things that I think have really been missing early on from digital art is like everything was so static and like cookie cutter looking, and now there's all these different types of brushes that can make things look random enough to get that character. You must have 1 million undos. Or oh no, you're not doing undos, you're painting. It looked like you were undoing
No,
for a minute there.
yeah, no.
I was like, wow, how'd you get so many undos?
If you hold the brush like that, it'll just make these continuous stuff, you know.
Sure.
Then if you go, let's see, let's undo. If you okay, okay, now we're back. If you go quick, you get these smaller breakups,
Mm-hmm.
but slow gives you bigger breakups.
That's really neat.
Yeah. And then what you've got, I mean, this is a whole nother beginning for a painting.
Mm-hmm.
So recycle. I don't want that white. It's probably coming from down. Yeah, that's what's happening. It's just moving the paint off. So the minute I finish this, if I came in with, let's try creative background. And I need,
Getting lots of compliments in the comments on our work. Thank you, everybody.
yeah, thank you. Got a bright rocks.
That's a texture.
Yep,
Cool.
rocks actually. So it's putting in a rocky look, and now I've got something else I can kind of play with. And if we go to, got a thick paint. Let's see.
Cool. It's like grass and bushes in the foreground.
Just crap, really. I'm just putting in some textured brush strokes.
How are you choosing the colors? Just kind of just based on feel, or are you going
I was
by it?
picking the color from below from the image that I just brought in there.
Have you tried the color gamut masking technique at all?
No, tell me about it.
So I've heard a lot of people talking about it. Like Jason Moranto was really into it, and then I think Karen's been doing some of it. So I thought I'll check it out. It's a technique that's mostly developed by James Gurney. I think it builds off of some other artists, but yeah, it's just a way of picking color where you limit your color palette with a mask, so you could put like a triangle shape over the color picker, and then you can only use, let's say, purple, blue, and yellow for your painting. And in doing that, you can actually use it to get more like abstract colors like what you have in your painting, or you can use it to pick realistic colors, and it makes it so you can't pick a color that's outside of that color gamut. So let's say like you had a painting that was supposed to be really, really cool at night, like a night landscape during winter or something. You wouldn't have a bright red in that. So if as long as you choose colors that exclude that bright red, if you do put in a red, all you can put in is maybe like a really dull dark red. And in that case, the red will look right in that scene because it fits into the gamut.
But see, I like throwing in that unexpected bright color.
Well, it doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just it's a tool. You know, it's like you could draw with perspective guides, but then go in and draw something that's not in perspective. So
Right.
it's one of those things where I think starting out you feel like it's a limitation, but all it really is just a tool you can use. And so I'll use it loosely. You know, like I'm probably not even using it the right way. There's probably, well, maybe there isn't because it's all theory, but you know, there's probably like a way you're supposed to use it, and I've just kind of been tinkering with it and getting some really cool results. And now I use it for a lot of my landscape paintings. It takes some of the guesswork out of color, but also sometimes it inspires you to use colors that you wouldn't think of using. So I kind of like it. I'm into it. They have it integrated into Krita, which is a free art application. I'm not sure if you've tried that. And then
Uh,
I think to some degree it's in Rebel now too, but I'm not sure if it's a gamut mask as much as it's segmenting your colors into swatches.
I'll have to. I'm not sure that I'm following everything you're talking about. So
Yeah, I'll send you a link to a video because I have a little tool that I made. Can actually see here in my mixer pad. I've just replaced my mixer with this. So this is one example of the full gamut, and then if I wanted to, I could actually limit that gamut. I'll show you an example.
okay. Oh, I see.
Always comes in too big or too small. So that's the gamut limited, and I was going to use that for the painting earlier of the beach because the beach had only really blue, like indigo blue, and then, you know, a little bit of the more cyan blue and then yellow. It didn't have any red in it, so I might as well exclude all that. And you know, of course I would know not to pick it anyways, but this forces me to, if I did decide I wanted to put in some purple, you know, even though it's not present in the photo, there's some darker desaturated ones there that I could select from. And then, you know, if I wanted to add greens in, I could.
That's fascinating. So, but can you change the value and still stay in there and just change the value as you're working?
Correct. You're not supposed to change the hue outside of that range. So, you
Right.
know, like I wouldn't want to use red or anything. And then the chroma or the saturation, you can change up until the limit of the gamut. So let's say like over here in these yellows, I can't choose a super bright yellow green if I want to, because that's outside the gamut, but I can, within that same hue, choose a more desaturated one that's down here on the, people on the screen can't see what I'm doing. Let me switch here. They're like, what are you talking about, dude?
I could see what you were doing because I'm watching the
Yeah.
whole thing. I just realized they couldn't.
So you can use the more desaturated hues down here. Those are fine to use. And even technically in my gamut, there's a tiny bit of red still present in there, and I could use that if I wanted to. It doesn't mean you have to use those colors. It's just a suggestion. And once you do, a good analogy that's been used to describe it is like color grading on film. So when you watch a movie, you know, sometimes there's scenes where they're in a really cold place, you know, in the Arctic or something, and everything's tinted a little bit blue. Or maybe there's a scene in a movie where they're fighting a dragon and it's tinted a little bit, what's the word, sepia. You know, it kind of forces your colors to stay in a certain range, and then you get a piece that looks very cohesive in terms of color. But this tool makes it easy because then it's right here in Painter, and you can just kind of have at it. I just have it set up as a template, and anytime I can load that template, and then I have all kinds of different overlays for that.
Well, I'm going to have to try that. I knew Karen was doing it, but I hadn't tried it. But then, you know, I want to throw in something like I just did.
So here I have this template, and you can go through all these different modes. Like,
oh, that's cool.
And then, of course, you could take that mask and move it around and rotate it around and place it wherever you want. Or you could even draw, anything, any kind of shape in there and limit your colors. So it's It's kind of a
That's
fun way to work.
what I like is it's so pretty to look at that
Yeah.
imagery. When I was there was a period of time where I did some corporate work, and it was for a flooring design company. And one of the things that I liked more than anything else was those big things of rug colors and, you know, where you would have swatches of color on great big pads, and I would just get all excited about them. It
Hmm.
was bizarre, but I love color when it's placed next to itself like that. It's so pretty.
Hmm. Yeah, I bought these smart lights for my office, and they can be any color you want. And I have fun. If I feel like the light should be red in my room while I'm painting something that's red, I can make it red. And I don't know, color is just a nice thing. It's a simple thing, but it's really nice. Well, we're a tiny bit over our time here, so I think we should probably wrap up.
Okay.
I mentioned earlier, people can go to your website. That's skipallenpaints.com, and I'll put that here in the chat. And you also have some courses on Digital Art Academy.
Right. The Digital Art Academy, and then my blog or YouTube. I mean, you can just look me up on any of those places. And uh, sometimes there are things that get on YouTube that are not on the blog, but most of the time they're on both places.
Yeah, I think if you search for Skip Allen, you're like the Skip Allen. So
Yeah.
should
Well,
should be easy to find.
yeah, there are some other Skip Allens out there. There's a photographer. Um, and I haven't been posting as much lately, so they're beginning to encroach on
Uh-oh.
first person that's called in.
Yeah, my doppelganger is Aaron Rutten, who's like a cardiac surgeon, and every now and then people will email me with messages for him, like those pieces for the pacemaker didn't come in today. Can you look into that? And you got the wrong Aaron.
Right.
He probably hates me too, because he's probably getting like, all kinds of emails that are supposed to be for me.
Yeah, but he probably would never look at it. He's probably got somebody that's, looking at his mail for him,
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Well,
Let's see. Yeah. Thank you,
that's
Aaron.
cool. Yeah, thanks for joining me today. I had fun painting with you, and we'll have to do this again.
Yeah, we should. I mean, just like this last thing that I'm working on, this is fun to do this and to do it while you and I are just playing, just being mindless. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's beginning to come into something. I'm excited about it. So I will work on it later.
Yeah, it's fun to hang out and talk about art, and people can ask questions and whatnot. So we'll talk about doing another one.
Right. Tell me this, did people stay? Do we still have a number of people, or did everybody leave after?
Nope, there's still 74 people watching.
All right. Thank you, guys.
I think we got up to like 80 something. That's pretty cool.
That is.
Raquel, Diana, and Robert all say thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for tuning in. Posey says thank you very much. Thank you, Posey. So yep, we're gonna go ahead and call this one a finished live stream. Nothing crashed while it was recording, so this should be available to watch. I don't know if it has to process or anything on YouTube, but you should be able to go back to this link and watch the beginning if you missed that. And definitely check out Skip's YouTube channel as well and give him a subscribe. I'd like to thank you again, Skip.
Thank you, Aaron. Really, bunches.
Enjoy the rest of your day, Skip, and everyone else out there, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye, everybody.